Imagine a time when the world was lit not by electricity, but by flickering lanterns and the soft glow of hearth fires. When stone walls held stories as old as the stars, and every shadow whispered secrets from centuries past. Tonight, you are invited into that quiet world, a place where the night breathes slowly, and the only sound is the soft clink of iron and the distant hoot of an owl. You will walk the stone corridors of a great castle, where the lantern keeper tends his lights and the past waits patiently, ready to lull you into gentle sleep. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with strokes of purple and gold. Within the thick stone walls of Castle Eldenmoor, the day's bustle was settling like dust on ancient tapestries. Camus, the lantern keeper, moved quietly through the courtyard. His cloak brushed softly against the worn cobblestones, and the leather straps of his lantern case jingled faintly with each step. He paused beside the great oak door that led to the castle's highest tower, a place where the wind sang songs through narrow arrow slits, and the view stretched across rolling fields and dark forests beyond. With practiced hands, Thomas lifted a brass lantern, lighting its wick from the dying embers of the hearth. The flame flickered and danced, casting shadows that seemed to reach out like old friends. He carried the lantern up the winding staircase, each step echoing softly in the cool stone silence. At the top, he placed the lantern carefully on an iron hook beside the heavy wooden door. The light bathed the room in a warm golden glow, chasing away the gathering darkness. Outside, the first stars began to twinkle, and the castle settled into its nighttime rhythm. Creaks, whispers, the soft rustling of tapestries. Thomas took a deep breath, feeling the cool air mingle with the warmth of the flame. For a moment, he stood still, listening. The night held its breath, waiting, and slowly, the castle's story began. The castle's walls, thick and weathered by centuries, held the evening's cool embrace. Outside the lantern's glow, the courtyard began to fade into a tapestry of shadows and soft moonlight. Thomas moved with calm certainty, his footsteps muffled by worn leather boots that had long since learned the rhythm of these stone halls. He made his way toward the great hall, where flickering torches along the walls threw long, slow shadows that danced like gentle spirits. The scent of burning oak filled the air, mingling with faint traces of herbs hung to dry, their fragrance settling into the stones like a whispered secret. As Thomas passed beneath the towering arches, the quiet murmur of voices drifted faintly from behind heavy oak doors, the last of the evening's gathering, noble voices softened by time and distance. Reaching the hearth, Thomas knelt to tend the dying embers, coaxing a warm glow back into the fire. The gentle crackle was a song of comfort, a reminder that even in the stillness of night, there was life and warmth. With practiced hands, he filled his lantern from the flame, watching the wick catch light, the soft golden flame flickering like a heartbeat. The lantern's glow filled the immediate space, painting the rough stone with hues of amber and shadow. He paused for a moment, leaning against the hearth's cold iron frame. His thoughts drifted like smoke curling upward. Memories of quiet nights long ago, of a childhood spent beneath similar vaulted ceilings, where the dance of firelight had been both mystery and magic. The castle breathed around him, a living thing forged of stone and stories. Its walls whispered of nights and feasts, of secrets locked away beneath floorboards and in hidden chambers. But tonight, all of that seemed softened, a distant echo carried gently on the night air. Thomas rose and moved toward the inner courtyard, where the moon cast silver patterns on the cobblestones, cool beneath his feet. The garden there was a wild thing. Herbs and flowers growing untamed, the scent of lavender and rosemary drifting softly in the night breeze. A single owl hooted far above, its call echoing between the battlements. Thomas smiled softly, the sound a companion in the quiet. He walked slowly, savoring each step, each breath, feeling the cool night settle around him like a familiar cloak. The world was hushed here, wrapped in the soft embrace of darkness and the gentle rhythm of a life lived in measured moments. Ahead, the castle's great gates stood closed, their iron bars resting heavy but secure. Beyond them, the village lay sleeping, its small lights blinking like fireflies across the dark landscape. Thomas lingered a moment by the wall, looking out at the distant hills where stars glittered against the black velvet sky. The constellations told their silent stories, unchanged, through centuries, watching over the quiet earth below. Turning back, he felt a deep sense of peace, the kind that comes not from excitement or adventure, but from belonging to a world steady and unhurried, where every night unfolded like a slow, gentle breath. He climbed the stairs again, lantern held carefully to avoid the drafts that whispered through the corridors. Each step was a soft echo, a slow heartbeat marking the passage of time. Reaching his small chamber tucked beneath the battlements, Thomas set down his lantern and unrolled a simple cloth, revealing a wooden box filled with small tools, delicate files, tiny hammers, and polished lenses. His hands moved instinctively, touching each tool with respect and care. He picked up a pair of spectacles, worn smooth at the edges, and placed them on his nose. The world sharpened, the rough grain of the wooden table, the delicate threads of his linen sleeve, the soft flicker of candlelight dancing on stone. Tonight, like many nights before, Thomas would spend hours here, repairing the small, precious clocks and timepieces that kept the castle's heart beating true. Each gear, each spring, a whisper of time itself, fragile, steady, enduring. His fingers moved slowly over a pocket watch, its face cracked but still beautiful, the hands frozen at an unknown hour. With gentle patience, he cleaned the tiny cogs, careful not to disturb the delicate balance. Outside, the night deepened. The castle settled further into silence, its walls embracing the stillness like an old friend. The moon traced a silver path across the sky, and the soft ticking of clocks began to fill the room. Faint, steady, a lullaby in metal and wood. Thomas leaned back in his chair, eyes heavy but mind calm. The past and present mingled here, in the glow of lantern light, in the slow turning of gears, in the quiet heartbeat of a medieval night. And so, as you listen now, let the steady ticking carry you soft and slow, a gentle rhythm leading you deeper into rest where stories become dreams and time itself slows to a whisper. Outside Thomas's chamber, the castle seemed to breathe with the night. The ancient stones, worn smooth by countless years of wind and rain, held the memories of generations. Knights preparing for battle, minstrels playing soft songs by firelight, and quiet moments much like this one. Thomas often wondered about the lives lived within these walls, each a thread woven into the vast tapestry of time. He imagined the echoes of footsteps long faded, the laughter and whispered conversations now just shadows in the stone. Tonight, he felt connected to all of it. The soft ticking of the clocks in his room was a reminder. Time moves ever onward, but it also holds still, capturing moments like fragile butterflies in a glass case. His hands moved carefully, fitting a tiny spring into place inside an old wooden box that served as a portable timepiece. The box had belonged to a traveler who once visited the castle many years ago, a man with stories of distant lands and starlit deserts. Though the traveler had long since left, his box remained, a relic of journeys and quiet wonder. Thomas smiled softly, knowing that even here, far from bustling roads and roaring fires, the world beyond the castle's walls was never far from his thoughts. The candle flickered low, casting soft shadows that swayed gently with the draft. Thomas closed the box and set it aside, his eyes growing heavier. He stood slowly, stretching his stiff joints and stepping toward the small window. Outside, the moon hung low and full, its pale light spilling silver onto the courtyard below. A nightingale sang somewhere in the distance, its melody, sweet and pure, threading through the silence like a silver thread. Thomas inhaled deeply, the cool air filling his lungs with the scent of damp earth and pine. It was a scent he loved, one that spoke of forests just beyond the castle's reach, where ancient trees stood tall and secrets were carried on the breeze. He imagined walking there, beneath the canopy of stars, each step soft against moss and fallen leaves. The night was vast and calm, a gentle embrace that held the world close. Turning from the window, Thomas felt the pull of sleep, a slow tide drawing him deeper into rest. He moved back to his simple bed, the thick woolen blankets cool and comforting against his skin. As he settled down, the last glow of his lantern faded, replaced by the quiet pulse of the castle's heartbeat, the ticking of clocks, the creak of wood, the distant rustle of leaves. The world outside slipped softly away, and Thomas, the lantern keeper, drifted into dreams, carried gently on the slow, steady rhythm of time itself. The hours passed quietly as Thomas slept, and the castle held its breath beneath a canopy of stars. Outside, the soft rustling of leaves in the garden whispered secrets only the night could understand. A gentle breeze wandered through the battlements, carrying the faint scent of lavender and damp earth. The stone walls, thick and steady, kept the chill of night at bay, but beyond them, the world was alive in the softest ways. Inside the great hall, the torches had long since guttered to flickering embers, but somewhere in the shadows the memory of songs and laughter lingered. The echo of minstrels' voices and the clinking of tankards filled with mead. The castle, vast and ancient, was a sleeping giant, each stone and timber steeped in history, each corner holding stories waiting patiently to be told. At dawn, the world would wake again, but for now, the night was a slow river flowing gently through time. Thomas stirred softly in his bed, his breath deep and even. Dreams carried him away to distant fields bathed in golden sunlight, where wildflowers swayed and the air was filled with the hum of bees. In his dreams, he walked along a quiet forest path, the soft crunch of leaves beneath his feet blending with the murmur of a distant stream. The world was peaceful, endless, a place where time slowed to a gentle pulse, and every moment stretched wide like the open sky. As the first light of dawn began to touch the horizon, painting the clouds with soft hues of pink and orange, Thomas's eyes fluttered open. He lay still for a moment, listening to the gentle sounds of morning. The distant crow of a rooster, the rustle of curtains in a breeze, and the steady tick of a clock marking the start of a new day. Rising slowly, he wrapped his cloak around his shoulders and stepped to the window. Below, the courtyard was bathed in soft morning light, and the village beyond was beginning to stir. Faint smoke curled from chimneys, and the sound of wheels on cobblestones drifted faintly on the air. Thomas smiled softly, ready to begin another day in the castle, a life measured not in grand events, but in quiet moments and the steady turning of time. The morning light spilled softly through the narrow window, casting long, gentle shadows across the wooden floor of Thomas's chamber. The warmth of the sun crept quietly across the stone walls, slowly chasing away the coolness of night. Thomas moved deliberately, as if not to disturb the peace that still lingered in the air. He gathered his cloak and stepped into the quiet corridor, the soft padding of his boots muted by thick tapestries hanging along the walls. The castle was beginning to wake, but still held the hush of early morning. The servants stirred gently, their footsteps light on the stone floors, whispers of silk and linen brushing past corners and doorways. In the kitchen, the scent of fresh bread mingled with the faint aroma of herbs steeping in water, and somewhere a kettle began to whistle softly, a tender sound carried on the cool morning air. Thomas made his way down the spiral staircase toward the great hall. The walls here told stories in every stone, scenes of battle and celebration, carved deep into the rock by hands long since gone. He paused a moment to run his fingers lightly along a relief depicting a knight in shining armor, his sword raised high beneath a banner fluttering in the breeze. The image was frozen in time, a silent reminder of days when honor and courage filled the air like the song of lutes. But today, the castle's pulse was steadier, slower, a quiet life of routine and care, of tending lights and clocks and watching over the gentle turning of the world. Thomas reached the great hall and stopped beside the massive wooden table. A flicker of light danced in his eyes as he looked around at the polished pewter and carved benches, the faded tapestries hanging heavy on the walls. He ran his hand over the grain of the table's surface, smooth from countless hands and years of use. From a nearby side chamber came the sound of a harp, softly strummed by a servant girl. Her melody was delicate, weaving through the hall like a gentle breeze, soft notes falling like petals on the quiet stone. Thomas closed his eyes for a moment, letting the music wash over him. The day stretched out before him, slow and steady, like the measured beat of a great drum echoing in the distance. He thought of the clocks waiting in his workshop, each one a tiny world of gears and springs, each telling a story in its own quiet way. And so, with calm steps, Thomas turned back toward the shadows and lantern light, ready to greet the day as it unfolded, one gentle moment at a time. Thomas made his way through the winding corridors, the soft echo of his footsteps mingling with the distant murmur of awakening voices. The castle stirred like a great beast rousing from slumber, but it moved slowly, cautiously, as if savoring each moment before the day's demands. He passed the scriptorium, where flickers of candlelight danced behind heavy shutters, and the faint scent of ink and parchment drifted into the hallway. Inside, a monk bent over his work, illuminating manuscripts with careful strokes of gold and vivid color. A quiet art, slow and reverent. Continuing on, Thomas reached the armory, where rows of polished armor gleamed dimly in the early light. The metal was cold to the touch, but it held stories of battles fought long ago, victories, losses, and the silent courage of those who wore it. Thomas paused a moment, running his hand along a breastplate etched with the crest of Eldenmoor. He imagined the knights who had stood tall here, their hearts steady beneath shining steel, their eyes fixed on horizons only they could see. But today, the armor rested in silence, and the castle's strength lay not in swords and shields, but in quiet routines in the slow turning of time. Back in his workshop, Thomas set down his lantern and began to prepare his tools. The gentle clink of metal and soft brushing of cloth filled the room as he cleaned and oiled his instruments, readying himself for the day's delicate work. Before him lay an array of clocks, some small and intricate, others large and steady, each one a puzzle of gears and springs waiting to be coaxed back to life. With a calm breath, Thomas lifted a pocket watch, its silver case worn smooth by countless hands. He opened it carefully, revealing the tiny gears inside, their delicate teeth shining faintly in the lantern's glow. He began his work slowly, methodically, each movement measured and precise, a dance of patience and care. Outside, the castle filled with the soft sounds of morning, the chatter of servants carrying baskets, the distant clatter of hooves on stone, and the rustling of banners as the breeze stirred them gently. Thomas lost himself in the steady rhythm of his work, the ticking and talking of clocks becoming a soothing song. Time flowed around him like a river, slow, steady, unhurried. And as the day unfolded beyond the stone walls, within the quiet workshop, time was a gentle friend, a constant, comforting presence, guiding him through the soft, unbroken hours. The soft ticking of the clocks filled the room like a quiet chorus, each one keeping time with its own gentle heartbeat. Thomas worked patiently, his fingers steady as they adjusted the smallest gears. Outside, the sun climbed higher, casting warm light through the narrow windows, painting golden bands across the rough stone walls. He paused for a moment, wiping his brow with a linen cloth, and looked up toward the ceiling, where wooden beams arched overhead like the ribs of some great, ancient creature. The castle was alive with quiet movement now, the rustle of fabric as a maid passed by, the muffled laughter of children playing in the courtyard, and the steady footsteps of the castle steward making his rounds. Thomas smiled softly to himself. Though the day was just beginning, he felt the slow pulse of calm that made this place feel like home. He returned to his workbench and reached for a small clock, its face delicate and worn. The hands were frozen at a quiet hour, long since forgotten. With gentle care, he wound the mainspring, listening to the faint click as it caught. The clock began to tick, softly at first, then with steady rhythm, a tiny heartbeat echoing in the stillness. As the minutes passed, Thomas's mind wandered, drifting like a leaf on a gentle stream. He thought of the stories the castle held, tales of kings and queens, of battles won and lost, and of ordinary people who lived quiet lives within these stone walls. He imagined a young knight training in the courtyard, his sword flashing in the sunlight as he practiced with patient determination, or a noblewoman sitting by the fire, reading letters by candlelight, her thoughts drifting to faraway lands. Each story was a thread in the vast tapestry of the past, woven together to create the rich fabric of history. Thomas felt a deep connection to these stories, as if, by tending the clocks and keeping time, he was also tending the memories and dreams of all who had come before. The afternoon waned slowly, the sun moving across the sky like a slow-moving ship sailing through a sea of blue. Shadows lengthened, and the castle's halls grew softer with the approaching evening. Thomas stood and stretched, his muscles gently waking from hours of stillness. He picked up his lantern once more, lighting its wick with a small flame. The warm glow filled the room, pushing back the growing dusk. Outside, the first stars began to twinkle, faint and distant. The world was settling once again into the quiet rhythm of night. Thomas took a deep breath, feeling the calm settle over him like a soft blanket. The day's work was done, and the castle was ready to rest. He imagined the blacksmith's forge, the sparks flying as hammer met anvil, the steady beat echoing like a drum through the village streets. The scent of roasting meat and the warmth of the tavern's fire filled his mind, mixing with the faint strains of a lute and the soft murmur of friends gathered in quiet conversation. These images lulled him deeper into the sleep, their gentle rhythms mirroring the steady pulse of his clocks. Outside, the castle's great owl watched silently, its wide eyes reflecting the pale light of the moon. The stars wheeled slowly overhead, and time moved forward, slow and sure. Thomas dreamed of a world where the past and present met, a place where stories and memories flowed like a gentle river, carrying all who listened into peaceful rest. And as the night stretched on, he slipped further into the quiet embrace of sleep, wrapped safely in the warmth of history and time. As the night deepened, the castle settled into a stillness so complete it felt almost sacred. The only sounds were the distant rustle of leaves in the garden and the steady tick-tock of the clocks Thomas had so carefully tended. Outside, the moon traced a slow path across the sky, casting Lacaw's soft shadows that danced quietly along the castle's ancient walls. Thomas lay in his bed, his breathing slow and even, eyes closed as dreams began to weave their soft threads through his mind. He drifted through fields of wildflowers under endless blue skies, where the warm sun kissed his skin and the gentle hum of bees filled the air. A cool breeze whispered through tall grass, carrying the scent of pine and fresh earth, and somewhere nearby, a clear stream sang a gentle song. In this peaceful world, time moved with a tender grace, moments stretched wide like the open sky, and worry slipped away like morning mist. Thomas walked slowly along a forest path, the crunch of leaves soft beneath his feet, his heart light and unburdened. He stopped beneath an ancient oak tree, its branches sprawling wide like a wise old guardian. The tree's leaves shimmered in the dappled sunlight, and Thomas felt a deep calm settle within him, as if the tree itself was whispering stories older than the stars. With a gentle sigh, he continued on his way, guided by the soft murmur of the forest and the distant call of a nightingale. Back in the castle, the clocks continued their steady dance, marking the passage of time with quiet certainty. And as dawn approached, the world waited softly, ready to begin anew. The first breath of morning brushed lightly across the horizon, painting the sky in tender shades of rose and gold. The stars faded one by one like candles gently extinguished by the coming day. And still, within the ancient walls of Eldenmoor Castle, all remained quiet. In his chamber, Thomas slept soundly, his brow smooth, his hands resting gently by his side, as though even in sleep he remained the quiet keeper of time. The soft light of dawn crept in through the narrow window, settling upon the old wooden floor, tracing the worn edges of a small, familiar clock ticking patiently beside his bed. The great owl, now roosted upon the highest turret, closed its eyes, its vigil complete. It gave a final, silent nod to the departing night and the coming day. Below, in the garden, dew sparkled on each leaf and blade, as if the earth itself had dreamed through the darkness and awoken refreshed. The castle's halls held their breath a moment longer before stirring, stone and timber sighing quietly as the warmth of sunlight returned. And through it all, the clocks carried on, their steady rhythm the heartbeat of a place untouched by hurry. Time, as ever, moved forward, slow, gentle, and kind. And Thomas, the lantern keeper, slept on, embraced by the soft hush of memory, of peace, and of dreams still unfolding. Sleep well, dear listener. The story continues in the quiet places where time is tender and morning always waits just beyond the edge of night. Good night.